You are listening to Package Your Genius, a conversation designed to give you clarity on your calling and serve as a catalyst for your career. I'm your host, Amanda Miller Littlejohn. We made it to Italy. Yay! I'm so excited. I'm sitting here in my hotel about to head out into the Roman streets to explore a little bit more of the city. And yesterday I started thinking a little bit about this trip and how it came to be and how I used to travel and enjoy travel so much years ago. Back when I was in college and the year shortly thereafter, I traveled a decent amount internationally. I enjoyed hopping on a plane and going to a new country and exploring a new part of the world and felt pretty comfortable navigating and finding my way. And then at some point, I think it was shortly after I had kids, even though I did take some trips after I had them. But after I had kids, life changed and my kind of routine changed, my financial priorities changed, my time priorities changed. And I stopped making it a priority to explore and to travel. And I think at some point I missed enough years where I didn't take a trip, I started to tell myself I was a person who did not really travel anymore. I was a person who didn't adventure anymore. And I was thinking about that yesterday as I was sitting outside at a cafe talking to my friend who's here on this trip with me. And she's actually the reason why I'm on the trip. She was coming here for a conference and didn't want to come all the way here and leave right after the conference. So she asked me if I could get away and make the trip over and spend a few days here too. And so that's how this trip came to be. Not because I even attempted to change my pattern or do something different, but because a friend thankfully created a circumstance that made me become someone different. And in a way, that's my life coaching to me. It was not intentional by any means, but by her asking me to come, it kind of got me out of a rut and has gotten me over here, and I'm having a ball. And so we were laughing last night just about the trip and the experience and me being kind of back in the middle of a new city. And I was just kind of remembering how I used to do that all the time and how comfortable I used to be and how much I loved it. And I started thinking about why I stopped. And, yes, I had kids, but people travel with kids. I think it's more about that story that you put on yourself when you get to a certain part of your life, or maybe it's a story you've always had about yourself, right? So this is a fairly new story. I'm not adventurous. I don't travel. And that didn't used to be my story, but I thought about how easily it became my story and how easily it could be your story even if, it wasn't your story before, right? So like maybe you've never traveled before and you're telling yourself, well, I don't do that. I don't travel out of the country, or I don't go places where I don't know the language. The only thing stopping you from becoming a person who does travel or go places where you don't know the language is booking the ticket and going. Like in that one action of me taking the step to book the flight and get on that plane and get off the plane and be here, I have broken the story that I don't travel and that I'm not adventurous, even though I'm a mom and I have kids. And now I'm like, well, my kids are big, so I'm about to bring them with me. We all gonna be gallivanting around this globe. But whatever your story is, and honestly, it could be anything. It doesn't have to be travel, because I know most of you probably all do travel a lot listening to this podcast. But maybe it's about, who you are as a business person or a learner or romantically or a friend. If you've been single for a long time, maybe the narrative is, oh, well, I don't go out. I don't go on dates, right? If you have always wanted to take a class or learn a language or learn a new skill, but you maybe weren't always the best and brightest in class. Maybe school wasn't your thing. And you're telling yourself, well, I don't go to school. I don't take classes. The only thing you have to do to break that narrative is to register for a class and show up. And then, boom, you're taking classes, right? It's like, by coming here, I'm interrupting that story that I don't adventure. And it's funny how everything comes back the way I used to feel when I traveled to some degree, add 20 years or 15 years or however long it's been, and all of the aging I have been doing in that process. But aside from that, just the excitement, the way your mind opens up, the ideas that come to you, the energy that comes to you is totally familiar, and it's still there. It's like riding a bike, you never forget. And so I wanted you to think about the story you're telling yourself around one area of your life, right? So if you were to pick a word that describes how you want to be, and it may be a very private thing that you haven't even disclosed to other people, I want to be, here's one. I'm just disclosing this completely authentically and honestly and transparently. So one of the things I always saw myself doing, besides being adventurous, was being like this person who brings my family together. So I've always wanted to host gatherings and meals and holidays and do things. And right now we're not in a position to host in our home because we don't have the space, but our plans are to move in the next year or so that we can actually do that. But even if, we're not hosting people in our home, I think it would be really awesome to host something for the family to celebrate our lives and our bonds and the fact that we know each other, love each other, and want to stay connected. And so that's one of the things that I'm going to be working on this year, is just being a person who brings people together, and hosts my family. When I say people together, I mean specifically my family. I do bring people together through my business and my work, which I really enjoy, but I always had this vision of myself being like the place where people come to celebrate our lives and holidays, etc. So that's one thing for me. But for you, if you're thinking about a word or a term or a phrase or an identity, right, that you've always wanted to adopt, pick one action. Excuse me. Pick one action that gets you closer to that or defies the idea that you're not that, right? So like by me booking a flight to Italy defies that statement that I am not an adventurer and I don't travel. And so this whole idea of not bringing people together, maybe I decide, okay, I'm taking on Easter or I'm taking on Thanksgiving, although that I feel like Thanksgiving is a big holiday to tackle, but I'm picking a holiday and I'm telling everyone to join me in this town or this city, whether it's DC or somewhere else, and I'm hosting us for this holiday. Like I can do that now if I wanted to, right? So there, hold me accountable. But pick the word or the phrase or the identity that you don't feel like you are kind of living up to right now, but that you would love to. And then pick one thing that you can do that someone would do if they were that, right? So an adventurous person would travel out of the country. An adventurous person would go kayaking. That's another thing I really want to do. An adventurous person would go camping in the Grand Canyon, right? And for you, a person who is in relationships would maybe go on Match and find someone to go out to, or ask a coworker out or a church member out, or maybe go to a restaurant and have dinner by yourself. You get the idea. So I don't know what your things are, what your words may be. An author, right? Like that's another thing. I used to always be like, I'm a writer, I'm a writer. And then I was like, I don't have a book. How am I a writer? So then I wrote a book and now I'm a writer, right? Like I'm an author. And I'm always a writer. I write all the time. It's not necessarily for public consumption, but like that could be something that you've always said you wanted to be. You wanted to be a writer, but you haven't written anything. So what's one thing you can do to kind of adopt that identity? Can you go this afternoon and sit at a cafe and write your thoughts for 30 minutes? Boom, you're a writer. And you're at least getting into the practice of doing the thing that you say you want to be known as doing, or the thing that you want to feel that you are. It's not necessarily about being known, but it's the thing that you want to feel. Because for me, the adventure and the bringing people together, it's very personal. These are things that I just want to do because it seems like it would make me happy. And it's kind of like, I don't want to die not having been that person, right? Like I want to die being a person that other people say, she brought us together. You know, I always had such a good time when we went to Aunt Amanda's, or, you know, whatever. Aunt Amanda, I like that. Okay, I need coffee. It's literally almost 1 o'clock here and I just woke up, but I think in DC it's only about 7 a.m. So it's still early where you are. Maybe it's not that early here, but I'm gonna get my day going, go have some more Roman adventures, and I will